The best part of this movie, in my humble opinion, has to be when Jennifer Garner takes a bat to a pinata and whacks it to hell and back again until it is utterly obliterated, eviscerated, decimated. Because there is absolutely no way anyone watched this film and did not think that. One, Estelle, for being such a nice, sweet, and kind elderly grandmother, is most certainly a gaslighting foul. And secondly, Liz, dearest sweet phone sex operator Liz, who is just doing her job in the most ethical way she can, even though she's lucky as hell that her boss is Queen Latifah. Because if she had been answering to Miranda Priestley and had her accidentally picking up one of Vladimir's requests for a mommy dom on the call, best believe Liz would have been out on her ass faster than you can say cerulean. But sorry, I digress. As I was saying, poor Darius Liz also deserved way better than being tricked into accepting Jason's limp ass apology. And this movie made me want to scream, but might also be pretty accurate about society's insistence on forcing us to put up with bullshit. All in the name of love. Now, if you're just finding my channel, or maybe this is the first time you're watching my Romcom Ganda Tuesday series, please note that this is a video series where I do a first time watch or a rewatch of rom-coms from the late 80s to the early 2010s, just to see how well they hold up, especially with regards to things that younger me might have missed back when they had initially dropped. It means that for this particular video series, I'm a bit harsher on the rom-coms I watch because I try to view them through a more adult, slightly critical lens to point out some of the ways in which rom-coms are designed to act as propaganda to get us to behave or think a certain way as it pertains to matters of love. So, whilst I usually turn the critical part of my brain off, whilst I'm usually watching a rom com to just simply enjoy it, for Rom-Com Ganda Tuesday, I tend to switch it back on for the sake of the series, just to give you all some added context. Now, for those who are confused about why a series called Romcom Ganda Tuesday is dropping on a day that is most certainly not a Tuesday, well, to be quite honest, I had planned on dropping it last Tuesday, but then I thought, wait a minute. What is more serendipitous than me dropping a Valentine's Day movie video on Valentine's Day? So if you took the time to watch this today amidst what you might have planned for Valentine's Day, thank you for the gift of your time and your attention. And a big thank you as well to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses to. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. Now, this video will be split into roughly three parts. The first being the intro, the second being the synopsis, and the last being where I share all my thoughts. I will also put in timestamps so you can navigate the video as you so choose. And with that said, Valentine's Day is your veritable star studded cast with multiple storylines happening simultaneously. And it opens with Ashton Kutcher's Reed Bennett waking up beside his girlfriend Molly, who is played by Jessica Alba. Molly, who is still asleep at this point, is totally unaware that her boyfriend has produced a ring from where he's hidden it and was just about to slide it onto her finger when their dog woke her up. And Reed instead took the moment to propose to her. Molly says yes, and he slides the ring home. Quick side note. Did I think Reed was a dumbass for attempting to just slide the ring onto a sleeping Molly's finger without actually proposing to her at first? Hell yeah. I just want to put it out there, and I'm wondering if anybody else also suspected that that was what he had planned on doing. Anyway, a happy Reed steps out of his house and informs his friend and co-partner, employee. We don't really get confirmation in the film, but Reed informs Alfonso of the happy news. Interestingly enough, Alfonso was quite surprised to hear that Molly actually said yes. And as if that was not bad enough, Julia, Reed's best friend, was also very surprised to hear that Molly said yes. This, of course, has a bell ringing in our heads as we are clearly meant to question why the people in Reed's life were so surprised that the woman he's been dating agreed to marry him. We learn, however, soon enough that they do have cause for concern when Molly shows up at the flower shop that Reed owns and runs without wearing the engagement ring and mentions to Reed that she took it off whilst heading to work as she didn't want to field the million and one questions that our colleagues would have had for her. Reed accepts her explanation, but this comes back around to bite him in the ass when he gets home in the afternoon to find that Molly had packed all her things and was just about to leave him without having informing him prior, saying that she isn't really sure she wants to marry him. An announcement that devastates Reed, even as it confirms what had bothered Alfonso and Julia with regards their initial hesitation when Reed had mentioned that Molly had agreed to his proposal. They both suspected that Reed and Molly were not actually a good match. Julia, who is played by Jennifer Garner, wakes up on Valentine's Day beside her own boyfriend, cardiothoracic surgeon Derek Shepherd. Sorry, Harrison Copeland, played by Patrick Dempsey. Harrison, though, has to leave since he has surgery that day and is flying out to the hospital he works at in San Francisco. Most of the characters in the movie are living in LA, by the way. Julia, who works as an elementary school teacher, is happy to send her boyfriend off, unaware that after he leaves, he stops by at the florist shop, which is coincidentally Reed's shop, by the way, since Reed had just shouted at his said shop whilst on TV being interviewed by Jamie Foxx's Kelvin for a Valentine's Day special. Anyway, Harrison, who had already headed home, now drops by at the store and orders two separate orders for a Valentine's Day bouquet, one for Julia and the other for his wife and the mother of his kid. Reed is torn about whether or not he should break the truth to Julia. After receiving advice from Alfonso, he makes the decision to drop by at Julia's school with the bouquet in hand and tries to tell her the truth after handing her said flowers from Harrison. But he isn't able to do so before events occur that have Julia distracted and focused on her class. And to make matters worse, Julia is headed to San Francisco to surprise Harrison for Valentine's Day, following Reed's advice, who had suggested that she do so before the truth was revealed about Harrison's cheating ways. Not wanting Julia to be embarrassed, Reed follows her to the airport and tells her the truth. But Julia is unwilling to listen to him. But when she arrives at the hospital Harrison works at, she discovers that not only is Harrison very much married, but he and his wife just celebrated their 15th year anniversary. One of the older nurses hints to Julia where Harrison would be for his Valentine's Day dinner or meal with his wife, and Julia shows up dressed as a waitress thanks to aid from the maitre d' of the restaurant, who it turns out is the father of one of the students in her class, and proceeds to give Harrison the dressing down he deserves, something that his wife picks up on and which ultimately leads to them getting a divorce by the end of the film. Speaking of students, we have Edison, a precocious student in Julia's class, who shows up at Reed's florist shop and orders flowers alongside a card that he wants delivered to his Valentine in school. Reed, who is the one that handles Edison's order, is charmed and agrees to run it, even though Edison, who doesn't really have a concept of how much things cost, underpaid him drastically. Reed sends Alfonso out to handle the deliveries, but when Alfonso is accidentally rear-ended by Eric Dane's Sean Jackson, it breaks the door of the van and Edison's card and ordered flowers fall on the ground unknown to Alfonso. Panicking about his Valentine not getting the gift he had prepared before the day was over, Edison escapes from his grandparents' house under the watchful eyes of his babysitter, Grace, and runs back to Reed's store to ask him to help deliver his flowers to his Valentine. Reed then drives him to the restaurant, and Edison heads in and reveals to us that the person he likes and wants to be his Valentine is Julia. Julia lets him down kindly and sends him along to his classmate Rani, who has a crush on him. Speaking of Edison's baby sister, Grace, who is played by Emma Roberts, niece of the Julia Roberts, isn't having the best of days either, as she and her boyfriend Alex were planning on having sex for the first time and losing their virginity to each other. They had it all planned out to get the deed done in Grace's home whilst her parents are at work. Alex, who goes ahead of Grace to set things up, lets himself into the house and gets naked in her bedroom. He has flowers, he's playing music. Unfortunately for him, however, Grace's mother comes home during lunch and sees him, and embarrassed Alex runs out buck naked until he's able to get into Grace's car and she drives them off. The events of the day, plus Edison's disappearing act that had Grace chasing him all the way to the restaurant where Alex works, which is where Julia was hanging out with her friends and where Edison gives Julia the Roses makes Grace and Alex agree that after all this time that has gone, they agreed to wait a bit longer to have sex. The exact same conversations that their friends, Willie, played by Taylor Lautner, and Felicia, played by Taylor Swift, had earlier in the day. I wonder, was this film filmed back when Taylor and Taylor were still dating? Like, I'm curious. Anyway, someone else who isn't having the best of days is Edison's grandfather, Edgar, who has been happily married to his wife, Estelle, for the last 51 years. And it was on that very Valentine's Day that Estelle drops a bomb on him. The fact that earlier in their marriage, whilst Edgar had been busy traveling for work and setting up his business and was away for long stretches of time, she had had an affair with his business partner. Edgar, who is very well feeling betrayed at this point, leaves the house and finds his way to a movie night showing at a cemetery. He, however, is unable to buy himself a ticket, but thankfully, Topher Grace's Jason Morris is there with an extra ticket, and the two of them sit down to watch the movie. In the middle of their watch, Estelle shows up, demanding forgiveness, and she and Edgar reunite to the applause of the movie watching audience. Back to Jason. At the start of the day, we see him waking up with Liz Curran, played by Anne Hathaway, after a night of fantastic sex. Liz, whilst impressed about the time she had, has to run out for work. Work, it turns out, is a call from her client as Liz moonlights as a telephone sex operator. Turns out that telephone sex operators get a lot of business on Valentine's Day, as we see Liz fielding calls all day long, even whilst she's helping to cover for Queen Latifah Paula Thomas's secretary, who was unable to make it to the office that day due to having a burial in the family. The calls are so much that one of them eventually filters its way into Paula's line, who is entertained about the Russian man Vladimir, who is clearly in need of a mommydom, a need that Paula finds herself fulfilling at the end of the movie in the most entertaining of ways. Anyway, back to Liz. Jason eventually finds out from his friends that the day is Valentine's Day. And whilst the theme with Liz is new, he's encouraged to do something special for her on the day with the hopes of them eventually becoming something more. As such, he takes her out for dinner. But in the middle of it, she gets one of her work calls and leaves the table for a quick call. The problem, however, is that the call isn't as quick as Liz would have liked, and Jason eventually walks out to go check on her and overhears her conversation, which has Liz admitting her side gig to him. Jason informs her that he feels overwhelmed by it all and walks away, which leads him to the cemetery movie viewing and the two tickets that he had initially bought for himself and Liz. Instead, he gives the extra ticket to Edgar, and the two of them end up talking about the women in their lives and what they like about them. Sometime whilst watching the film, Estelle arrives and reunites with Edgar. Her words has Jason running over to Liz's apartment to apologize to her about how he had acted after learning about her second job. She forgives him and the two officially start dating. In the midst of all of this happening, there are even smaller bits of stories going on in the background. Julia Roberts' Kate is flying home for Valentine's Day. She's an enlisted captain in the army and was only able to get one day off, which she's using to head home. Her seatmate is Bradley Cooper, who is playing a character called Olden. Olden is impressed with how much Kate must love her partner, that she's willing to endure a total of almost 34 hours of flying time to spend just Valentine's Day with them. Over the course of their flight, the two bond and become somewhat friends. When they arrive and Olden notices that Kate is panicking because all the means of transportation to get her home would take forever, and remember, she only has a limited amount of time to be present, he offers her his own car so that she can get to spend the little hours she has left with the one she loves. And she does just that. She makes it just in time before Edison heads to bed, because Kate, it turns out, is Edison's mother, and the one she was rushing to get home to all along is her son, because Valentine's Day is their thing. Meanwhile, Sean Jackson, a star football player, has a not good showing at the tail end of his team getting knocked out of their chance to win the Super Bowl. Amidst all the gossip about what his plans are, if his team would keep him or which team he might fall to if he doesn't retire, he reaches out to his publicist, Kara, to put together a conference where he then comes out as gay. Later that night, whilst he's sleeping, his boyfriend, who it is revealed to be Olden shows up, mentions that yes, he saw the press conference, and the two of them reunite and get back together. And finally, we have Kelvin, the number two sports reporter for his station, who is given a task for the day to do some beat reporting from the street and ask people about Valentine's Day and what it means to them. Kelvin is the one that has Reed up on the news, where Reed gets to shout out his florist store. He does take a break, however, from interviewing when he catches wind of Sean's upcoming press release and rushes over to go see Sean's publicist, Tara, just to guarantee and see if he can get the chance to ask Sean a question when the time comes around. Kara, it turns out, is also very good friends with Julia and has a thing for throwing a I hate Valentine's Day party, as she's a bit cynical on the whole matter. However, at some point, she and Kelvin find themselves connecting. Kelvin shows up to her party as her date, and after Sean comes out and Kelvin shares his support for Sean on air, he and Kara kiss in the studio afterwards. Oh, and Reed and Julia finally come to the realization that they actually love each other. Julia goes chasing after Reed. They have a moment and an awkward first kiss. But by the second kiss, things are looking much better. All the while, Morley, who is feeling lonely, tries and fails to reach Reed so that they can potentially get back together. The end. The strangest thing is, if Valentine's Day as a film hadn't tried to make all the relationships work out in some way at the end, I might have actually enjoyed this movie. Hell, for a large part of the story, it was happily in the middle of my watching experience. I didn't exactly love it to high heavens, but I didn't hate it either. It was just okay. And I know this might scandalize some of you, some of my viewers, but I actually did prefer it to Love Actually for a large number of its runtime, as I had hoped that it was maybe trying to be a commentary on how commercialized Valentine's Day as a holiday is, and how, because of this insistent need by society as a whole to ensure that everybody is all coupled up when the day arrives, it places an unfair burden on the couples or individuals caught within it. Of course, when I realized that that wasn't what this film was going to be about, I was still okay with it and kept my fingers crossed with the hope that it would actually eventually stick the ending for me. But oh boy, was I wrong in that regard. Instead, what this film did was affirm for me my cynicism that society's insistence on love, especially as it portrayed through the media we consume, is insistent on us putting up with shit that we shouldn't have to endure. Let's start with the biggest one in the room for me, Edgar and Estelle's marriage. Maybe it's because every time I see Edgar, I remember Joe from The Princess Diaries, of course. It didn't help matters that Amelia Mionette Thermopolis Rinaldi, the queen of Genovia herself, had to be stuck with the most lackluster of romance interests in this film, but I will get to that in a bit. As I was saying, maybe it's because I thought of Joe every time I saw Edgar, the care he extended to his grandson Edison, and how utterly besotted and in love he is with his wife. That having that moment when Grace notices Estelle's clear discomfort when Edgar proudly said that he and his wife have had no other partners in the almost 51 years of their marriage made a pit yawn wide in my stomach. The alarm bells immediately set to ringing as I put two and two together. But even with that, my assumption was still wrong, because you see, I thought that the guilt we could read on Estelle's face was an indication that Edgar wasn't her first boyfriend or first sexual experience. I figured maybe she had actually dated someone before him when they were younger. They did meet, after all, when Edgar was in architecture school and Estelle was starting off her career as an actress. So it wasn't like they were teenagers or anything when they fell in love. Nope. If anything, we can assume that they were most likely in their very early 20s at that point. So in my head, I was like, of course, he wasn't her first. Hell, maybe he wasn't even her second or third. And that's okay, but maybe she never told him. Edgar, on the other hand, probably made that assumption because she was his first and Estelle had never tried to correct him. Now, imagine when we learn the truth and I realize that it's a big misassumption on my part. Estelle's big secret is the fact that sometime in the course of their marriage, when Edgar had been traveling a lot and she had been lonely, she had had an affair with his business partner. Once again, that wasn't the part of the film that pissed me off. It is realistic that in the early parts of their marriage, with her husband working so hard and with his frequent travels, Estelle would be lonely and would turn to his business partner and their family friend, who was readily available at the time for companionship. Like she said, it was a short affair and they both ended it soon afterwards. That wasn't what pissed me off. Nope. What made me absolutely have my Julia whacking a pinata moment in my head was what came afterwards. Edgar is understandably upset and walks away. Circumstances lead him to the second ticket that Jason Morris had. And whilst they are watching the movie in the cemetery, a movie, mind you, that stars a much younger Estelle in her prime, who comes running but Estelle herself, who is there to apologize for everything that happened. Actually, no, her exact words are that she's there to ask for forgiveness, yes. And even if Edgar doesn't think she deserves forgiveness, he's going to have to give it to her anyway. Because when you love someone, you love all of them. And I swear to God, that was the moment when the record scratch went off in my head. Because what the hell do you mean by even if you don't want to forgive me, sucks to be you? You will have to do so anyway. Because if you love me, you have to love all of me, even when I've broken our vows and I'm here gaslighting my way into gaining your forgiveness. That shit was foul, utterly foul. And it pissed me off to no end because up until that point, we had seen the relationship between Edgar and Estelle as a beautiful one. Even with the infidelity, there could have been a better resolution to their relationship other than I had a full blown affair with your business partner of how many years, and now I'm here demanding you forgive me. And all of this, mind you, happens within the space of a few hours. Like, this is all taking place on Valentine's Day. It is why I felt this movie merely existed to bamboozle the lot of us into accepting shit from those we love, all in the name of the holiday of love. Like, fuck that. Estelle and Edgar could have gotten back together and most likely would have. And I would have zero complaints if the movie had actually had Edgar work through his feelings first. Maybe he feels guilty that he really wasn't home enough times to be with his newly married bride. Maybe he believes that his business partner took advantage of Estelle at a moment when she was feeling very vulnerable and lonely. Hell, maybe he believes that since the affair happened so long ago and they had decades of happiness afterwards, it's something he was willing to forgive. Any of those would have worked for me if the narrative had Edgar come to that realization on screen. But nope, Estelle bamboozles the way through, and since the film needs everything to be resolved on Valentine's Day, we don't get a satisfying resolution or belief that the mending of Edgar and Estelle's marriage was earned. And that pisses me off because 51 years, and that is the best this damn film could do. Excuse me? And speaking of Jason fucking Morris, let's move on to the second couple in this mess of a film that pissed me off with their resolution. And before you say it, this is not me equating Jason having a problem with Liz's side gig as a phone sex operator with Estelle's admission to having cheated on her husband. Like, clearly, they are not on the same scale. Also, clearly, Edgar and Estelle have way more history, what with their 51 years of marriage, compared with Liz and Jason, who have only been on one date. Clearly, they aren't on the same level of irritating events, as far as I'm concerned, within this film. But boy, oh boy, did Jason's reaction piss me off a ton. Firstly, it really isn't his business what Liz is doing on the side to make money. They weren't in a relationship at that point. Prior to the Valentine's Day dinner, they had only hooked up the previous night and were ideally at the start of the getting to know you portion of a relationship, the part at its inception. In being so put out by the work she does, the inappropriate, well, I could call you, but I don't think I can afford you, hee hee joke, which was so not funny. And then he bails on her, only to show up hours later, not because he realized on his own that he was being a dick, but because he overheard Estelle's gaslighting speech to Edgar and proceeded to regurgitate it with a few tweaks to Liz, asking for her forgiveness and for her to take him back, just because it has me still stuck in the same problem I have with regards how things were resolved for Edgar and Estelle, which is the fact that it wasn't actually resolved. Jason isn't actually down for Liz's work. It's still something he's very visibly uncomfortable with. And this is not me judging him, of course. Everybody does have their own limits and interests and things they can or cannot put up with in a relationship. That is fine. My problem is that we can see on screen that Jason isn't all that okay with Liz's work. He's merely tolerating it at this moment because, he's in love. And maybe it's the cynical part of my brain, but they literally just had their second date, one that ended on a spectacularly disastrous note because he found out that Liz's side job is being a phone sex operator. What's to ensure, therefore, that this bit of their relationship lasts? That for 8 weeks from the moment Jason doesn't decide that, you know what? he still cannot handle what Liz has to do for work, and he leaves her because their relationship is so young. It's in its infancy at this point. And I guess a part of me who is very much aware that Jason didn't even have the space or time in the movie to fully process his thoughts, to think about what it would mean for him to be in a relationship with Liz where her work isn't hidden from him anymore. Like, we get nothing in the movie to show that he's thought things through to that extent, because once again, there is this inane rush to ensure that everything is all neatly tied up before the clock strikes 12 midnight. And then there's the entire situation with Edison, which, I'm not going to lie, the film did do a nice misdirect to have us believe that the girl he has a crush on is Rani, his classmate. And in that moment, I thought, oh, it's just like the young boy in Love Actually too. Not very original, but still cute nonetheless. But then everything flips on its head, and we get the reveal that the person who Edison likes and has a crush on is Julia, his teacher, which of course puts the scene when Reed shows up to the classroom with the bouquet and hands them over to Julia in stark relief and in a much clearer light now that we have all the facts gathered. Because at that point, Edison must have thought that those were his gifts, those were his flowers. But as I was saying, Edison flips things on his head when he gives Julia his flowers as a Valentine's Day gift and tries, in the way of kids, to confess his feelings for her. Julia kindly and graciously shuts him down on that, affirming Edison's sigh at the quite significant age gap between them. Now, if this had been where the film had chosen to wrap up Edison's story, I would have thrown a little party in celebration, because I think it perfectly captured the bit about inappropriate love born out of the admiration felt for a teacher who listens and respects you and treats you not like a kid the way the other adults do, but rather someone who is your own person. So, of course, Edison would have had a crush on her. It makes some sense. What doesn't make a lick of sense is this film's decision to have Julia encourage Edison to turn his affections towards Rani instead. Now, like I said earlier, I do understand the why of it, but at the same time, I'm stuck on the fact that as the audience, we are very much aware that Rani likes Edison. Julia confirms it twice in her conversation with Edison. The problem, however, is that whilst Rani likes Edison, Edison doesn't like her that way. He has never thought of her in that way. Since all of this is happening on Valentine's Day itself and the events are taking place within the 24 hours of the day, of course, he isn't capable of switching his emotions immediately, which, I repeat, I would have been okay with if this film hadn't decided to throw Edison at Rani, the only brown girl in his class, mind you, a girl we've already established likes Edison, even though Edison doesn't like her back. And in a way that makes me wonder if that part of the film wasn't written by Mindy Kaling, because that was all her style wise, of course. But like I said, they threw Edison at her in like the last 10 minutes of the part of his own romance story arc, which makes no sense to me. And the only reason why Edison even considers this at all and goes to hand over the flowers to Rani that he had first given to Julia, mind you, because remember, she's the one he actually wanted to give the flowers to. And it's because of her that he then hands it to Rani instead. The poor girl's flowers were regifted and repurposed, and gods, that hurts, because that poor baby girl deserves so much better. Hell, Edison deserves so much better as well than being gaslit by his teacher into turning his attention to Rani with that whole spiel about how he would eventually come to like her anyway. Like, come on. We could have resolved this entire situation with, oopsie, Edison had a crush on his teacher. This was resolved without veering into uncomfortable grooming territory, and Edison was sent along his way, his first heartbreak as a child. But nope, because Valentine's Day is insistent on everyone being coupled up at the end, they had to tie in Edison's reluctant regifting of the flowers to Rani, giving that poor baby so much false hope, because you know that is going to crash and burn. And God, I hate it. Like, sure, some beats with the other couples felt a bit rushed, but I was okay with the little bit of groundwork that the film had put in to give us the glimpse of how well Kara and Kelvin, for example, match based off of their relationship hang-ups and their mutual dislike for Valentine's Day, or how well Reed and Julia work as best friends who take a while to realize that they actually are perfect for each other. Like, sure, it's a bit cliche in how it was executed at the end, but it did work out and I enjoyed it. Plus, the reveal that Eric Danes, God, I really am sending strength and just strength to him and his family during this time. But as I was saying, the reveal that Eric Dane's Sean Jackson was actually in a relationship with Brandon Cooper's Olden up until Olden walked away, probably due to him not being happy with needing to stay in the closet to be with his football player superstar boyfriend. And with Sean's press conference, where he chooses to come out, Olden chooses to return to him. That was so sweet and a great way to flip things on his head, because I never would have suspected that Olden was Sean's boyfriend. But then it made so much sense how disinterested he was with all the attention, in that, yes, he was heartbroken, but he was also very much gay. It was so nice. And the bit with Julia Roberts, Kate being Edison's mother, was one I'd called from the very moment we were introduced to her in the plane. And she just nodded along with Olden's assumption that she was headed home to a boyfriend slash husband. Even though I had guessed it way earlier, I still thought it was cute when we got the reveal. Also, such a nice touch about, oh, have you been to Rodeo Drive? Like, if you watch the movie to the end, to the bloopers, when they're like, oh, have you been to Rodeo Drive? And, Kate, who is played by Julia Roberts, is like, yeah, I went shopping there once. Big mistake, huge. Because, of course, like, it's the same writer for Pretty Woman, and they did the nod to Pretty Woman. It was cute. I liked it very much. But yeah, all in all, when the movie wasn't trying to force things to happen with its characters to get them a resolution where they had to be together, even though it shouldn't have happened so quickly, especially within such a limited time frame, when the show wasn't trying to force things, it worked. When it did force things through, it made me so irritated. We could have gotten such a good story with Valentine's Day at the core of it anyway, if this film hadn't been so damn stubborn. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channel. They sound like something you might potentially be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you on Monday with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.